have a motion to open the public meeting? Mr. Lomena, seconded by Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 4-0. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the September 5th meeting? Mr. Lomena, seconded by Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 4-0. And now, this is the part of the board meeting that is the best part. Well, it could be second best because we do have our student council representative tonight. But the commendations, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Bosser.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus. And before I do that, I would like to apologize to both the board and the community for our late start. Typically, we like to be very precise in our meeting schedule. I apologize for keeping you waiting. There is some board business that's conducted during executive session that went longer than I anticipated, so I apologize to both the board and the community for the delay in the start of our meeting. But I am pleased to have some wonderful members of our Elwood School community to recognize tonight and to introduce them and to help share some of their successes. I'd like to call upon our intermediate principal, Dr. Scott.
It gives me great pleasure to present Ava Cassidy-Genovese to the Board of Education in recognition of her character and work ethic. Ava is hardworking. She gives her best effort in everything that she does. She serves as a model for students on what excellence is. Ava is kind and compassionate. She truly cares about everyone and goes out of her way to help others. Ava is a natural leader who knows how to take responsibility and use her presence for good. An excellent example is serving as our 5th grade tour guide for our 3rd graders. She exhibited character and was so poised. Ava is a shining star. We know she will continue to grow and lead in the Elwood School District, and we are very lucky to have her as a 5th grader this year.
I'm going to share a personal anecdote. I was at the new student orientation for 3rd graders with Ava, and she approached me, and we had a wonderful back and forth, which caused me to turn to Dr. Scott and say, "Who is this kid?" Because I was very, very impressed with the adult nutrition presentation. Congratulations on this. Come take a picture with your family.
It gives us great pleasure to present Carla Weiss to the Board of Education for recognition in her leadership. We feel so strongly about her that we didn't even combine our writings. We both wrote our own separate, which we felt you truly deserved. So please come forward.
Dr. Bosser, Board of Education members, I've had the pleasure of working with Carla Weiss for the last 25 years. First, as a physical education colleague and now as a physical education athletic director of the Elwood Public Schools. Carla has taught physical education at Boyd Intermediate School for her entire career. Carla's leadership as a lead teacher at Boyd Intermediate School is outstanding. She is a passionate teacher who loves working with students. Carla is highly organized and develops new lesson plans to keep all students engaged in physical education class. In fact, Carla will often dress up in character to further enrich her lessons. She recently, last Thanksgiving, I observed her in class as dressed up as a chef during her Thanksgiving lesson. Students loved it. Carla also coached our Elwood John H. Glenn Junior Varsity soccer team for 8 years and was very successful. Furthermore, Carla runs in our annual Elwood Endowment 5K race for the Elwood school community. She encouraged her students to join in the race. Students who beat Carla receive a special pin that reads, "I beat Miss Weiss in the 5K." Additionally, Carla works closely with Dr. Piscano at Boyd to organize and develop the yearly PE schedule for the Boyd Intermediate Building. As a teacher, coach, and mentor, Carla has developed a culture of respect, discipline, and hard work in a deeply caring environment for all students. Carla, additionally, is a shining star when it comes to her teaching ability and instructional approach. Her drive to excel in the classroom has enabled her to be one of the top PE teachers in Suffolk County. The professionalism and positive impact of Ms. Weiss and her students and the staff at Boyd Intermediate School has integrally benefited each student and her colleagues. She incorporates and teaches many of the life lessons in each of her lessons. Thank you very much for being excellent. Thank you.
So some of us may be a little redundant, but we just felt that you deserved your own 2 special honors. Mrs. Weiss is a master teacher and leader. She has worked in the Elwood School District for 25 years. She is such a reflective practitioner that constantly goes back to her lessons to make them perfect. I have never met a teacher that is so meticulous and tenacious on making every lesson perfect. She believes in constant improvement and has communicated her desire to grow and implement best practices. She is a lifelong learner, and that is what makes her a highly effective teacher. Highly effective teachers understand that we as learners are never done, and there is always more to learn and do. She participates in district-wide events to promote money to benefit the students, such as her running the EE 5K race. She has also served as a union representative for our building. She is an advocate for her colleagues, yet she always carries herself in a wonderful demeanor. Her professionalism is exemplary, and her work ethic is outstanding. Her meticulous work has allowed her to plan a seamless field day with 10 different stations to be more inclusive for all of our students. She even shares her work with other professionals in the district to improve their practice as well. She is a team player. Carla, it is always a pleasure to watch you teach. You are passionate about your subject, and it comes through in every single action you take during the day. You are a conscientious leader, and you continually strive to do your best. You are the epitome of what a master teacher is, and it is our honor to work alongside you. Congratulations.
So while we're posing for the picture, I will share, I certainly agree with the comments made by our fellow administrators. And Mrs. Weiss, in addition to this wonderful certificate, there's something else we have for you, which will be presented to the boarding committee tonight. We got you a brand new gym floor.
That's exciting. I can't wait for that.
And you'll find out when it's coming later.
All right, guys. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Yes. We have a few students, but if the commended student would like to return home to do homework or read or do an art project, anything but a screen, then she can leave for the rest of the meeting. But if you'd like to stay, you're always welcome to stay. But congratulations to those commended. Now we get to introduce our student liaison to the board, who will grace us from now on, right? Every month, every meeting, with an update of the goings-on within the school buildings of the Elwood School District. So please welcome Zayn Siddiqui.
Good
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zane, and I'm honored to be representing the student body as All-School President this year and reporting the going-ons in Elwood. The 2019-2020 school year is already off to an exciting and busy start. With only 17 days in session, we've already accomplished so much. Starting at Harley Avenue, the young but eager students started the year off ready to hit the books. Parents kissed and hugged their children as they prepared for their most daunting year yet, kindergarten. On the first day, students dressed to impress, striking poses outside the school's main entrance after following the world's famous Harley Yellow Brick Road into the school. Classrooms were already bustling with activity as students filled their desks in brand new color-coded school supplies while engaging in fun icebreaker activities that helped to ease the transition. All grade levels at Harley are now enjoying studying phonics through the new TC Phonics units of study. Maple the Elephant in kindergarten, Rashid the Lion in first grade, love the name by the way, and soon to be introduced Gus the Dragon are helping the students every step of the way. Harley is also honoring their September Knights of the Month. From second grade, Sophia Gonzalez from Mrs. Sheehan's class, first grade, Charlotte McCallalife from Miss Petrie's class, and kindergarten's Juliet Levier from Mrs. Shea's class. These students are carefully selected on the basis of Harley's 3 R's: respect, responsibility, and forming positive relationships. The faculty and staff at Harley meet to make the decision each month. Great job to these hardworking individuals. At Boyd, the school was already booming before the doors even opened to the students during the district's super successful Superintendent's Day Conference. The students began the year through a celebration of International Dot Day on September 16th. The auditorium was bursting with excitement as students filed in to celebrate this activity that takes place globally each year. The day is based on Peter Reynolds' infamous book, The Dot, which stresses the importance of believing in yourself and others. This vital ideology was emphasized in order to start the year off with an optimistic and hopeful mindset and reinforce the school's 3 R's: respect, responsibility, and relationships. This day truly fits the school's motto of Boyd believes in me, and I can see why it is Dr. Toscano's favorite day of the year. All students at Boyd have also completed their STARS testing benchmarks for the fall, and the school hosted their fall book fair in order to foster love of reading in the students' young minds. At the middle school, the first back-to-school social was a huge success. The new outdoor activities and games only added to the fun. Students played Giant Jenga, Connect Four, Spike Ball, and more, while a DJ bumped some great tunes. Fun was had by all. A new reflection room and a fitness center for all the PE classes has also been implemented in the school for all the students to enjoy. These initiatives are almost complete thanks to the support of the board and the Booster Club. To kick off the year at John Glenn, the Freshman Buddies program, for now its 4th year, has successfully equipped our mentors through training over the summer. The incoming 9th graders were greeted with compassionate and smiling mentors who are ready to ease a typically nerve-wracking transition. Mentors answered questions, addressed concerns, ran through schedules, handed out Chromebooks, helped find and open lockers, and gave tours to the freshmen's new home for the next 4 years. The Chromebook initiative prevails through its 3rd year at John Glenn to provide a new and interactive approach to learning. Now all students grades 9 through 12 have a Chromebook to take home. This technology is truly redefining learning. To assist, the tech-savvy Mrs. Krista Albrecht, District Technology Specialist, is pushing into freshman seminar classes for Multimedia Mondays to help students build capacity using G Suite tools and other technologies available on the Chromebook. The Chromebooks have helped to push the boundaries of education beyond the 4 walls of the classroom. A few of these moments where students have immersed themselves completely into their learning were captured by Mrs. Brzezinski and can be found on the John Glenn High School Twitter account. On September 12th, the school hosted its Senior Parent College Night, which was extremely informative and helpful. In addition to this, college visits have already begun with 19 visits already, and they just started last week. Our amazing counseling center has over 70 more college visits lined up for this year, where students are given an opportunity to have a personalized information session with the college rep about various programs, admission requirements, along with an open forum for any questions the students may have. It also provides the students with many scholarship opportunities. John Glenn is also proud to announce that 3 seniors this year have been recognized as National Merit Commended Students. Huge congratulations to Michael Brown, Matthew Devitt, and Catherine Yaskowitz. This is an extremely difficult title to achieve. Congratulations are also in order for our fantastic kickline team and their dedicated, unstoppable coach, Mrs. Pilaker. They have been awarded with yet another bid to nationals. The team received a superior showmanship for their campus experience, along with the Spirit Award, which is designated to the most positive, enthusiastic, and hardworking team. This award is chosen by the other schools at camp, which truly shows the dedication of the team. This year, Natalie Yang and Lauren Queckie were selected for All-American Awards for the 2019 season. Congratulations, ladies. I'm very proud to announce that John Glenn is also home to the young oboe prodigy, Hannah Kleinman. Hannah's hard work, talent, and dedication have not gone unnoticed. She has been awarded a place in the NISMA All-State State Conference Symphonic Band. Not an easy feat. Another musical prodigy that Elwood is home to is senior Melissa Mandel, singing extraordinaire. She has earned a place in the All-State Soprano Treble Chorus. Congratulations to the both of them. On September 7th, the Elwood community, including students from Harley, Boyd, Elwood Middle School, and John Glenn, participated in the Huntington Unity Day Parade. The Unity with Diversity Club, headed by Mrs. Kennedy, the Kick Line coached by Mrs. Pilaker, and the Elwood Marching Knights, directed by Mrs. Henson, all marched in the parade to show their Elwood pride. All 4 schools and districts had successful Meet the Teacher nights where friends and family could get a taste of a typical day in school. The Shared Decision-Making Committee at John Glenn has created a Student of the Month initiative that will be showcased on the John Glenn Instagram page at we.r.jghs. Definitely follow if you don't already, for some great mindfulness and study tips. Students of the Month are chosen by how a student positively impacts John Glenn rather than solely academic or athletic accomplishments. The Student of the Month at John Glenn is first nominated by the students and then selected by the faculty. All that in just 1 month. Elwood truly has the best students, teachers, administrators, and staff. Many exciting events are still to come next month district-wide. Just as a sneak peek, we have Spirit Week coming up with some fresh themes this year along with Pep Rally and Homecoming. A great chance to show your Elwood pride. Thank you all so much for your time and attention. I look forward to updating you again next month.
Thank you very much. We look forward to it. Now Dr. Bosser wants to follow.
Zane, try to be more comprehensive in your next report, please. And thank you for sharing all the good things happening in our schools. And I will give the board a preview that I had the opportunity to watch the promotional video for the new Student of the Month program at John Glenn High School, which may or may not star one Zane Siddiqui. So it was a very enjoyable introduction. Thank you, Zane, for your continued efforts representing the class. I will keep my update a bit more brief. I was fortunate enough to attend a conference this past weekend in Saratoga with the New York State Council of School Superintendents, and I appreciate the board's support of continued professional development for myself and the other leaders within the district. I feel that the experience was very valuable and will help guide some of the thoughts and the work, some of the discussions that take place throughout the district for the remainder of the year. I was fortunate to get some legal updates. Not surprising, a lot of the discussion in Saratoga was around some of the vaccination requirements, the red flag laws being discussed in the police department, some issues that districts are experiencing regarding vaping and the health concerns that surround them. I was fortunate to attend a presentation on digital media literacy, which was held by Professor Howard Schneider. It was a very valuable experience which will be replicated on Superintendent's Conference Day within the Elwood School District. So I was very pleased to see that someone that was presented to all superintendents on a statewide basis will be here in Middle of Elwood come Election Day, and he'll be doing a keynote address to all of our instructional faculty, as well as follow-up workshops with many members of our teaching staff. Professor Schneider is doing some real revolutionary work about finding the reliability of sources and searching relevant and reliable resources within this growing world of social media and his term fake news. So that was in delivery. One of the keynote speakers is typically the Commissioner of Education. She usually closes out the conference, but as we have an interim commissioner right now, as we know, Mary Ellen Amelia has moved on, the Chancellor, Dr. Betty Rosa, spoke at the conference. And it was interesting to hear what the Board of Regents feels are the priorities for the coming year, knowing that one of them needs to be appointing a new commissioner. So I noted her 8 priorities. She talked about encouraging diversity in the educational workforce in both leadership positions and classroom positions, exploring multiple pathways for graduation, which is a topic that all educators agree should be reviewed very carefully, developing assessment tools that measure what students can demonstrate rather than just what students know. The regurgitation of facts is becoming less and less a priority for students. As the Chancellor said, they can all Google everything. Create the next generation of leaders and thinkers and talk about equity throughout the state. She certainly spoke about safety. She talked about making connections with higher education and addressing the teacher shortage that we are experiencing here in New York and absolutely on their own. And she talked about making certain that voices from the field are heard, including local leaders, local teachers, in decisions being made on a statewide basis. And lastly, the equal access to quality education. And I must share that that was the prevailing theme of the entire conference. It's wonderful that our students in Elwood are enjoying many successes, and as a district, we are enjoying many successes. But we are failing if the same cannot be said for the district next door. And in many cases, that is the case, where we have students performing at a very high level in one neighborhood, but in the adjoining neighborhood, they're not seeing the same success. So the Chancellor spoke about the broader community that we're all part of in our state, and making sure that we're not just focused on our own success, but the success of all students. And I thought that was a wonderful theme for the conference. So I appreciate again the board's support for allowing me to continue my own development and attending of workshops like this, and I hope that it's to the benefit of the students of Elwood. And such concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you for reporting back so well on what transpired over the weekend. Okay, we are up now to residents' remarks, and we do have residents, and they're leaving before they give remarks, apparently. But maybe there's some lingering residents over. The board encourages all residents to attend its meetings, and this section of the agenda affords them the opportunity to speak. Persons wishing to speak should identify themselves and any organization that they represent at the meeting. Comments related to district business or any agenda item should be kept as brief as possible and may not exceed 3 minutes. Questions or comments concerning matters which are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and may be discontinued by the president. Public discussion of matters relating to staff, students, or others at which the reputations, privacy, or right to due process could in some way be violated is prohibited. Any remarks? Seeing none, we will move on. To the capital bond update from Ms. Dunkel and Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus, and thank you to both Mr. McDonald and Ms. Dunkel for preparing an overview of the work that has been completed as part of the capital bond project, and also the scope of work that we should be looking forward to in the coming years. As the board is well aware, the community has given the approval for a rather large capital project to take place over the next 5 years. While we are enjoying some successes, there's also a great deal that remains to look forward to of structural improvements we'll see in our buildings. So to take us through that, I asked Mr. McDonald and Ms. Dunkel to share.
Thank you, Dr. Bossert, and thank you to the board for the opportunity. Just a quick recap. In November of 2017, the community approved a $34.5 million bond, the goals of which are to replace and upgrade aging infrastructure items that are nearing the end of their useful life, and to improve and modernize classroom space to facilitate improved instruction. Regarding the financing of the bonds, in preparation of the borrowing, which we just recently did, the district had to go through a Moody's evaluation, and I'm happy to share that the district retained its credit rating of AA3, and we also received a positive outlook. And that can be attributed to the last few years of work that the board and administration has done in building up the reserves and having an overall better financial picture in the school district. That rating has a positive outlook and a great impact on our actual borrowing rate. So because we had the positive outlook and we were able to retain our rating as opposed to being downgraded, when we went out to borrow 2 weeks ago for the first half of the bond, we borrowed roughly $15 million, and we were able to obtain a rate of 1.76% for the life of the loan. That resulted, or will result in savings of a few $100,000 over the life of the loan for the next 15 years. The schedule of work. So due to time constraints at New York State Education Department, our initial schedule of work has changed, and Mr. McDonald will go over that when I'm done speaking. And it will continue to change as we move forward through phases 3 and phase 4. Whenever we have capital projects, the projects have to go up to New York State Education Department, and they then go through a approval process. The typical approval process about a year or so, or 2 years ago, was about 18 to 26 weeks. for the approval process. So we can't do anything until this project's actually approved by the state and then comes back down to the district. So that was one of the first issues, so hurdles we had in starting the project phase of the bonds. We're also limited in the projects that we can complete during the school year as to not disrupt the instructional process, so most of the work needs to get done over the summer. And over to Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. Right here we have milestones set for each phase of the project. There's 4 phases. The first phase was supposed to start last summer, and that was to include all 4 roofs on our buildings. Because we got late approval from SED, we actually ended up starting only 2 of the roofs. The ones that most needed it, and I'm very thankful we were able to get them to a position where they were substantially completed before we had really bad winter weather. The other 2 roofs we just worked on this summer, and thankfully we had a good summer with regards to weather, and allowed the contractors involved in both the high school and Boyd to get to substantial completion by now. So the roofing work is essentially completed. That should have been done in 2018. And the phase 2 work that should have gotten done this summer, because we only received SED approval in late May, we weren't able to put much of that work out to bid to get it done during the summer. So some of that work is now going to be attempted during the school year, that which can be done at night and will not affect the instructional process. Yeah, sure. Fire alarm systems, some of the installation of the fans that we're putting in both the high school and the middle school to help with ventilation during the warmer months of the year. Ventilation in general, that kind of work can get done because it's small areas that are involved, and we can deal with them at night and not affect classes during the day. Larger projects that were supposed to get done during this past summer, like abatement, which essentially affects the whole building in some instances, we weren't able to get done, and we're now going to have to schedule that next summer. But we also have phase 3 that we have to get approved up at SED and put out that work for bid, and hopefully get some of that scheduled for this coming summer. So we're going to have a little bit of a bottleneck there, and we may have to bump some work that was supposed to get done next summer into the following summer. We're going to have meetings with our both construction manager and our architect and engineer to establish a revised milestone for completion of these items, to try to get them done in the most effective manner and still allow our summer programs to go on, which requires, at the minimum, 2 of our buildings being available for those summer projects. So that is something we're going to be working on in the next couple of months. This milestone summary will change as we go through the fall and into the early winter, and we'll be updating you as to what those changes are and what we will be doing this coming summer and the following summer in order to bring us back on schedule for completion of the whole thing in 4 years as we originally intended. Any questions?
I will just add some commentary for the board. One of the things that was a parameter given to John, as well as our architects and engineers, is something that we made a commitment to the community. What would expedite this process and make it a faster build is if we shut down all 4 of our buildings during the summer. As the board is well aware, that question was raised several times during the bond presentations. And what we did was we made a commitment to the community that our facilities would remain available for summer activities like our clubs and our athletic programs. So while it certainly would lead to the construction being expedited, it would also close our campuses to all student activities, which we made a commitment to the community not to do. So this timetable was written with the parameters of we will always have access to at least a school facility so that all the activities that the Elwood community is accustomed to can continue.
The only thing I would add is that we also have an energy performance contract which has been approved by the state, and we're in the process of getting the funding put in place so that can start. And it's very conceivable that we'll have the work associated with that project coming into play probably in January. And so it'll be a very busy time. And a lot of good stuff getting done. And the main goals of improving our infrastructure, I think are going to be realized, achieved, and I think we'll all be happy at the end of it. I know I will.
Thank you. Just to continue on, as Mr. McDonald mentioned, phase 1 is essentially complete at this time, which was the 4 roofs. So we're anticipating filing the final course reports very shortly, which would generate our aid for the next school year, which is helpful because it'll coincide with the new debt payments as well. So as we move forward, updates will be posted to the website and also with discussions with administration and the Board of Ed.
And when should the taxpayers be seeing their first income?
The first, because we just borrowed this year, the first debt payment will be due in the 2021 school year. So the first debt payment will be budgeted in that cycle as well. So the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you. So, Mr. Tony, I sit on the facilities committee, and I have to tell you, as a former project engineer, that I love to compliment you guys on that, is the format for which you laid out the scheduling of projects. And I just want to let the public know that that format in its fluidity is on the website, correct?
Yes.
So that as you go along, November, December, and you say to yourself, hey, where are we with this? You can go on and look on the website and see, oh, hey, yeah, it starts November, and we're on track.
Right, like I said, it's available now, and as we said, we'll be updating it probably on a monthly basis to, to see exactly where we're going, especially with the future projects.
So thank you very much, and thank you for all the hard work, because it really is a lot of work.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, next up on our agenda is to accept the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Mrs. Weiss, seconded by Mrs. Mamalito. Any questions, comments on the consent agenda? I have some. Included on tonight's consent agenda, you look to N16, is the approval of various advisors to clubs at the middle school. And included on that is a new club, which is the GSA, which is the Gay Straight Alliance for the middle school. I want to let the community members know that this is a student-led club, and the board has clearly, as recent as this evening, tasked the administration to evaluate closely how the administration and the faculty is delivering sexual content of all varieties to the middle school, to ensure that it is done in an age-appropriate manner for all students, inclusive of the 6th grade elementary students in the building, as well as the secondary 7th and 8th graders. So that is something that will be ongoing. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I also want to point out that legal has been consulted at length with this. And so we really feel like we are serving the interests of all of our students with providing a student-based club. Any other comments or questions on the whole consent agenda?
Dr. Lasser, can you just, speak in there? Just in general, because I love, the fact that we offer all these clubs to our students and they're all student-driven. And I think what was it, 2 years ago, which is now one of our top clubs at the high school, was that table tennis. And I remember when it first came out, and I was like, oh, table tennis. So I just, what is the process like? Do we have an infinite number of clubs that can go on, or how do we look at what we're, because they spark interest, I guess the whole process of, how are these clubs generated? I know they're student generated, how do we, the whole process going through in a nutshell.
Sure, I'll summarize as best I can succinctly. You're right, there is a wide variety of clubs that take place at both the high school and middle school. They're rich, they're diverse. We also have some elementary clubs, by the way. But looking at the co-curricular appointments tonight, the board and the public can see the great variation in the types of offerings we have for our students at the secondary level. Truthfully, it's typically born on student interest. Very often, students will come forward, approach their principal, as they've been asked to do, and submit a club proposal sheet. And what the students are required to do is to talk about the types of activities and mission and vision they have for the club. Sometimes the students will recruit an advisor. Sometimes they will leave that to the charge of the administration. But basically, we have some minimum numbers in mind before we would allow a club to go. In recent years, we've had lots of additions to our club offerings. Some of them have stood the test of time, others have not. Some clubs vary in interest from year to year, where one cohort of students has a deep interest in an activity, and the next year that wanes and the club doesn't run. The process is interesting. Before we can really start to recruit student interest and formulate clubs, the advisors need to be appointed. So none of our clubs have really met and started to engage in activities until after the board has approved what is on the agenda tonight for the advisors. There's some carryover from last year. There are certainly clubs that we see every year, like yearbook and things of that nature, which are just a tradition to have. But then there's variation. And just under Dr. Sapien's leadership in the middle school, there have been a good handful of newly introduced clubs that are built upon student interest and have gained momentum. Some other clubs, there have been waning interest. To answer your question about infinite clubs, we have to stay within the budget.
That's the question.
Every year, the principals are given a total co-curricular budget, and they can only run the number of clubs that fit within that budget. So sometimes it's moving chess pieces on the board, where one club that has limited student interest will be removed in place of a club that far more students are interested in pursuing. Sometimes we exhaust the budget, and students come forward with a greater interest. And then we turn to some of our outside supporters, and there have been clubs supported by the Booster Club and other outside donors throughout our years. So basically, we want to make sure there's something for everyone. We want to make sure that our co-curricular activities are diverse, varied, and well-attended. So that is what we're doing. Principals are charged with measuring attendance to make sure that we are serving our students correctly and that we're funding the correct clubs that meet that student interest. So far it's going well. The board will see a variation in clubs from year to year, again, based upon what the students want to do. And this year, we are very pleased that we're able to offer such a variety within what was a very tight budget cycle.
So when you have, do you have a process for evaluating if you get 10 kids that come up, 10 clubs that come up, and obviously you only have funding for 5, is it like a first come, first served type of it? Deal, or do you really look at maybe the content and the objective of the club so that you don't have redundancy? That even though they're, they might be, club for blue hair and then a club for red hair, you don't have like 3 of the same type where they have the same objectives. I'm just curious how that would, so that everybody gets an opportunity to have diversity and interest and then go forward with that is what I think is the objective.
And you're correct. We would make sure that if there were more clubs proposed than those that we could find funding for, we would make sure to focus on the diversity and to make sure there's something for everyone. We would be we'd be very hesitant to promote clubs within the budget that have something similar already in the budget. So if we did find ourselves in a position where we had to limit the number of clubs, it would be about making sure there's something for everyone.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Oh, so let's vote on it. All in favor? 4-0. Now we are up to awarding the security services. May I have a motion for the following? Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the award of security services pursuant to the competitive bidding RFP 2020C 0050730, provided by Eastern Suffolk BOCES to Wisdom Protective Services, inclusive of addendum number 6, which provides exclusive authorization of the administration to conduct student discipline within the school district as presented to the board at this meeting effective September 1, 2019 through August 31, 2020. Can I have a motion for that? Mrs. Weiss, seconded by Mr. Lamena. Questions or comments on this from the board? Since we are awarding a contract and the addendum, I'm offering public comment on this. If anyone from the audience has a public comment. Okay, see no public comment. All in favor? Oh,
I'm sorry, we were talking.
Perhaps I
Yes.
can offer some explanation. So there's a state regulation that indicates when the district enters into security services with a firm like this, and in the future when the district enters into a memorandum of agreement for a school resource officer with Sept Police Department, there is a state requirement that the public be given the opportunity to comment on that issue. So the documents are available through board documents and viewable by the public. So if anyone in our community should have read all of that material, which the board was charged with doing, and chose and elected to make commentary to the board about it before they enter into the agreement, this is the form in which you would. Then this is not, it's time to do it.
to the mic and sorry. Yeah, do the same things that you would for just general remarks.
And for the record, we said comments, not questions.
Agape Bell, representing myself. I did read the documents. Am I talking? Okay. I did read all the documents online, and I saw this is a new company that we're working with. The same one.
Yeah, please.
Wisdom Security is the same agency we've been working for a number of years now.
I thought so. Okay. My comment is: in the past, we have used only retired police officers for our security services.
Mhm.
Is that still the case, or I think I'm seeing a shift?
So to answer your question, our contract still calls for all of our security officers to be retired law enforcement officers, which could be a police officer, a court officer, a corrections officer, thank you. But we do have some individuals currently filling roles that don't have that experience. Those individuals are temporary basis. As you might imagine, and I'm sure the community can understand, in recent years, the demand for school peace officers has increased dramatically. And the number of districts that are requesting former law enforcement agents to serve in that capacity has increased tremendously. So while Wisdom is doing their best to recruit and retain retired law enforcement officers, right now there are more positions they need to fill than candidates they have. So yes, there are some individuals working in the district who do not have that background. But while those individuals are in the positions, Wisdom is actively trying to recruit former law enforcement officers to take their places.
And is the pay rate of these temporary non-law enforcement retirees, or the same pay rate?
It is not. If they have the former law enforcement background, they're paid a higher.
That makes sense. Okay. And the gentleman who replaced Sandy is a district employee, not an employee of Guardian, of,
That is not correct.
Wisdom.
Our director of security, Phil Aversano, is, first of all, a retired captain from the New York City Police Department. And secondly, he is a contracting employee to Wisdom. He is an employee of Wisdom. We pay a contractual rate to Wisdom for his services. He remains a Wisdom employee. There's an office at John Glenn High School because that's our security command center. But we pay a contractual rate to Wisdom. They pay his salary and benefits.
my comment is, so far, I think he's doing a good job.
Mhm.
I've seen him around and spoken to him, so he's present.
We
Yeah.
agree. Thank you.
That's-
Seeing no more public comments or questions, all in favor? 4-0, thank you. I think this brings us up to policy, letter L, if you could read it. Let's look at that. We're gonna skip rules. We already voted on it. It's too late, honestly, it's too late. Okay. For policy, this is our first draft, reading of our draft policies, and there are a bunch of them. 2210, 2350, 4325, 4531, 4532, 5150, 5225, and 5220. This is the first read on for discussion. So is there any discussion, questions, comments from the board members on any of those first read policies?
So Mrs. Marcus and myself sit on the policy committee as board members. I was out of town, so I submitted questions, and there was a wealth of policy that we've gone through. And I just would like Dr. Voss, there's several new policies on there, and people might question, what's the reason for these new policies? What brings them up? Do we just pull them out of the hat? It doesn't really work that way. So I want to give Dr. Voss the opportunity to explain why those policies are put forward. I'm sorry.
Not at all. We had a conversation within the policy committee that was repeated for the board, but there are several reasons why policies come up for review. On most frequent occasion, it's a change in law. All of our policies that we hold as a school district must be in accordance with federal, state, and county and town laws. So we have counsel that works for the New York State School Boards Association, which we subscribe as a member. And they are very carefully monitoring all laws that have any governance over school districts. And when laws change, they make recommendations for revisions to our policies. We then review them to make sure they're in line with the mission and the vision of the Elwood School District, and then they're placed before the Board of Education for adoption. A very concrete example of this is we have health and wellness policies that reference vaccination requirements. I think the community is very familiar with the fact that in June, New York State changed vaccination requirement laws to remove the religious exemption. So we have policy in the district that references that religious exemption. We needed to go back, remove that exemption from our policies so our district policies would be in accordance with the law. Now, while that one was very well publicized and in the news and discussed quite a bit, there are changes to the law that frequently impact the policies that we follow as a district. So that's the most common. Secondly, as an administrative function, often we will be partaking in activities that are in line with policy, and then the practice will change within the district for some reason. Our attendance policy is an example of that. We felt the need to change our policies reflecting student attendance requirements to be in line with some of the requirements that have come through the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is a federal guideline. So we made recommendations to the board based upon administrative purview and teacher and stakeholder input to change our attendance policy. And the board has seen fit to assist us in that regard and has been adopted.
And attached to that attendance policy is a superintendent regulation, which is the day-to-day functioning of
Correct.
that.
Policies are set and enforced by the Board of Education. Superintendent's regulation are an administrative purview and at the discretion of superintendent schools,
And much more fluid than policy.
or his or her designee very frequently.
Yes.
Yes, and regulations can be changed as the need arises. It doesn't have to come back to the Board of Education for a first reading, second reading, and a vote. Regulations are fluid, and regulations consistently change to meet the needs of our students and faculty. And finally, sometimes things happen and districts learn from the experience of others. I will give an example. After the Parkland tragedy, throughout our country, there were many student-led walkouts. And many districts had policy that indicated if students left school grounds without consent, they should be suspended. And because of the nature of these walkouts, there were a lot of boards and administrations that were criticized for disciplining students for demonstrating against gun violence. So many districts then reviewed their policies and inserted language that spoke specifically to peaceful demonstrations. We did it. Many districts did that. And that was something that NISBA says, hey, learn from others. This is something that happened, this is something that's real, and your policies should reflect what your actions would be. Our policies are all very searchable and available on the district website in board docs. You can enter any keyword or any subject into that search bar, and you'll see our policies that reflect it. I'm often asked, why do we need a policy if it's the law? The answer is because it's far more available to our community and accessible to our community to search our district's policy guide rather than searching New York State case law. And it is very typical best practice that your policies will create redundancies between both commissioner's regulations and New York State law. I'm sure I've used too many words to answer your question.
No, you did it perfectly, and that was you mentioned the student expression policy, okay, which is one of the new policies that were forward. And finally, I'm just going to give kudos to the captain of the policy committee ship, which is Mary Lou, because it's on, when we get the policies, when she gives them to us, and we read them, it's ours. I mean, so I can't even imagine what her workload and then the administration's workload before it even gets to us. It's so complex. And I remember when we first got this subcommittee, and of course, I'm on like type A, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna get this done in a year, and just kind of smiled, no way. So it was, so I do appreciate all that work. Thank you.
I did want to comment on one, and I've expressed this, but I want to express it publicly too. For the new policy, student personal expression, I read through it, and the nature of a lot of these policies where you're giving a judgment call to staff of any sort. In this case, I guess it's the principal or designee, to determine what is, obscene, lewd, indecent. I can go on and on. Basically offensive in a level that needs to be thwarted. That's very subjective. So what I have and some of it has to be, and there's no way around it, but that can get a little bit dicey when you're putting together policy, when you can have any vague language or something that could be totally subjective. So I've asked the administration to add something to this student personal expression policy that mirrors our school-sponsored student expression policy, and that's that there is an internal appeals process. So if you are a student and you get thwarted by an individual in the school, that there is some protection built in that you can appeal that to someone else. Because in many ways, the student personal expression should be a little bit more free for the student than the school-sponsored, because now we're attaching the school to it, right, expression. So I'd like to see an appeals process of some sort added into this before final adoption.
So my only comment in response to that is I certainly understand wanting to make sure there's consistency in the vetting of what is appropriate in school setting. But any appeals process that takes place at the building level could not extend beyond the building principal. I am a strong believer that the building principal needs to be the final authority on all matters of student discipline. If a student is wearing a t-shirt deemed offensive and the teacher asks the child to change or remove that offensive language, the appeal can't go beyond the building principal because it's an action that needs to be immediate in nature and needs to be corrected. If a student arrives in school wearing something that is deemed inappropriate, it needs to be corrected immediately. This is not something that can have a wide process or levels of discussion. So while I certainly understand your concern and agree with you, this should not be arbitrary, it should be very consistent. I firmly believe the final decision has to be the principal or his or her designee, which would obviously be the assistant principals who will know that. As this is a first reading and the time for discussion, and there is no vote forthcoming tonight, is the board in agreement with the administration adding language that would say that if any article of clothing is deemed, any article or materials are deemed inappropriate by a faculty or staff member, the final decision is at the discretion of the building principal.
And I agree definitely that it shouldn't go beyond the building. So I think the logic behind that and the need for immediacy is appropriate and strikes the right balance with the issue raised, which is there should be some opportunity to confirm the judgment being applied relative to it. So I think that's a fair compromise and an appropriate approach.
The two things, if there's any discipline related involved in this, then I would hope that that would be appealed if it's beyond flipping over of a t-shirt.
Yeah, there are
Not that there necessarily would be, but if there is, I would assume an appeal would be included in that.
There are always cross-references to our policies, and any matter of student discipline that extends to suspension, that would go to the policy that speaks to suspension. And therein lies an appeals process that extends to the superintendent of schools and the Board of Education. Whether the board is aware of it or not, as you've not had the opportunity to entertain this, certainly in my tenure, the last step in the appeals process for an out-of-school suspension is the Board of Education. So if an offensive material resulted in a suspension from school, there is a lengthy appeals process which the board is directly involved in.
So, under the student expression, it's not whether, so if somebody comes to school with a shirt that is not a popular belief, for whatever reason, that is not, that is their freedom to do that. Correct? That's not, if it's not a curse word or it's not, something, but if you have
As the board may or may not be aware, I teach the school law course for Stony Brook University, and this was our topic last night. Students do not lose their right to free speech when they enter the school building. They do, however, have strict limitations on free speech when they enter the school building. We are permitted to provide guidance and governance of the limitations of that speech. So if a student were to wear an article of clothing or have a bumper sticker on their notebook or something that was deemed to be inappropriate for a school setting, it's a different standard of measurement than what they might be able to do while walking down the street in their own home or walking through the mall. And that occurs on occasion on all of our campuses, where students will wear something or be in possession of something that is deemed to be inappropriate for school. And that's when this policy will come into practice.
So if you had something that said, down with mail or something. Yeah, teachers
We probably
would
allow
come
that one, we
across.
wouldn't like it, but we'd allow it.
Yeah,
And I
I
think-
think that's what I'm trying to get at, is that under the expression policy,
Well, I think
that
what-
we want to.
Yeah, and I think the concern
Because there
that
have been instances politically wise where certain
I think what comes up with the most frequency and why districts have had to evaluate these types of policies is, for instance, around the last election time, some teachers and school officials found themselves in hot water by asking students to remove political t-shirts, bumper stickers, and campaign materials supporting one candidate or the other. That is not permissible.
And that falls under the policy of student exposure.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more comments, questions on any of the first read policies? We are up to our second resident remarks. I am not going to read the spiel again, but everything applies. So if any resident would like to remark?
I have remarks, but does anyone want to go first?
Mrs. Bell was gonna cede some of her time.
Mrs. Bell, speaking just for myself. So I have a few questions. I did see, first I'd like to give the caveat that I think the list of stipends for co-curricular activities is good and fair, and I'm glad that people get reimbursed for their time and energy and enthusiasm for running events and clubs and things like that. But I do have some questions surrounding the clubs. So first, easy and quick. What is the evaluation process if a club advisor continually cancels meetings and doesn't usually, and maybe they met twice the whole year, and I see, she got $2,100 for this. So, which has happened in my experience, and I've been told by other parents as well, they don't, they cancel. So is there a process to
Just
evaluate?
make sure that you're not indicating in any way, any identifying info of a.
No, there's a whole bunch of them that make 21 as a stipend. There was a whole list. So, but I'm just throwing that out. So it's not one person, this is, happens.
It's just a general question of what a club
Procedure.
I'd be happy to answer your question. We share your concern. We want to make sure that when individuals within the district are being compensated for any activity, the activity is taking place as contractually obligated. So you noticed in the board agenda that there are different stipend rates for different clubs. Those rates are based upon the frequency in which the club meets, which is why the yearbook advisor has a year-long giant project, is compensated significantly higher level than a club that is scheduled to meet once a month. The business office has given guidelines to all club advisors on what the contractual obligation is for club meeting. That's why you see a variation in rates. There is a chart within the business office that speaks specifically to if a club meets once a week, this is the rate, twice a month, this is the rate, once a month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, attendance is taken, and yes, club advisors are required to fill out timesheets to indicate that the work has been done. If the work has not been done to the rate in which the board has authorized, then the board gets a revision and the pay is adjusted. Sometimes if the club is not able to meet the once a month that the person has been approved for, so then a revision motion goes to the board to adjust that rate, it would be decreased. There are some occasions where club advisors meet in far excess of what the board has authorized, and then it's at the discretion of the building principal whether or not to make a recommendation to the superintendent to increase the compensation for that advisor.
So there is a process, and they do have to report to someone.
Their building principal.
The building principal, then show that they met this many times.
They're required to submit the attendance sheets of the students, which
Mhm.
would indicate their presence at the meeting.
Great, okay, good. My other question is, when I was reading it, the total in the stipends for the middle school musical is about $12,500 in stipends, and, which is completely fine amount, in my opinion.
You're adding all of the people
Yeah,
involved with musical
yeah.
together, the choreographer, the set
Correct.
designer. Yes.
Everything, which it's a tremendous undertaking, it's a beautiful event. I have no issue with the amounts of the money, I just want to make sure I understand the system. Admission is charged, and I have a question, where does that money go? Does it go back to the building or the district?
So the funding, yeah. I'm talking way too much tonight. The manner in which we fund our school musical is dependent upon two resources of revenue. One is that there are monies allocated within the district budget that are spent funding the musical, and part of that is compensating the advisors, the choreographer, the set designer, all that.
Yeah.
Then we use the revenue generated for ticket sales to pay for a lot of the other expenses associated with the musical, buying the materials that will become the sets, printing the programs, all of those type of additional costumes, any additional lighting we need to rent, any additional scenery that we need to rent. That comes, we use the revenue through the ticket sales, which is part of the student activities account where the money is deposited and then spent.
Oh, the student activities account. I think that answers where I was trying to figure it out. Okay, thank you. My last question is about the bond, and thank you, Ms. Zembo and Mr. McDonald who left. But thank you for the update. My concern is, there's two areas that are near and dear to the health and safety of my personal children, and the tennis courts and the music room. So I'm curious, the tennis courts originally I thought were supposed to be done by now, this past summer, and now they're hopefully going to be done next summer. I'm curious as to, you're gonna be updating it on the website periodically, like where things are in the process? Is
Yes,
that what?
we wanted to present it to the board before we shared it with the community. And now that it's part of the presentation tonight, A, it's accessible by the whole community, and B, we can make it more readily available. It's been presented to the board, the board didn't make any suggestions for revision. To answer your question about tennis courts, there are strict state guidelines that indicate how we can do our projects. And we are prohibited from doing a large-scale project on the exterior of the building without marrying it to an interior instructional space. So we have to be very strategic about how we plan our indoor and outdoor renovation, because we're not permitted to simply resurface the tennis courts, which would be an easy thing to do while school's in session. We're not permitted to do that due to state guidelines that say that that project needs to be associated with an instructional space. As much of a tennis player as I am and enjoy throughout my scholastic career, it is not considered an instructional space.
So the other thing that is in my head is, so while the roofs were being done, is that considered exterior or interior? Exterior. So was any interior work done married with that this summer?
Roofs are able to make the list because they are considered a matter of health and safety. And you can't fix the interior building to stop the leaking. And they were also not a new construction, they were a replacement of existing. So there's a lot of guidelines, Mrs. Bell, that indicate how we can move forward with our projects. And we are doing the best we can to expedite the work as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, it's going to require some patience on the part of the community and the board.
No, thank you for giving us all the information and the updates and being so open with all my detailed questions, I think. But, so, I didn't want to say like, so this new update, we can kind of like trust?
No. We will periodically update the board as the progress of each of the projects. This is the current draft. This is the schedule of events. Construction, and I know you've had personal experience with construction in your home and capital projects, sometimes unknowns do arise. So I have to be candid with you, the board, and the community. These plans are written in pencil. There is a reason why we will always provide periodic updates to the board and the community as changes occur. When you tear down a wall in order to do construction, sometimes you don't know what you're going to find. Our building is 50 years old, and the part of this process that has become an additional complication is that they are considered of historical significance. So we must have our projects approved by the Department of Parks and Recreation, which I thought was a sitcom, but it's an actual agency that must approve our architectural design. And some things that we thought were very simplistic, like tearing down the outdated poor acoustic cafeteria ceiling at John Glenn High School, which traps sound, makes the room feel enclosed. the Department of Parks and Recreation must come in, evaluate both the ceiling and our architectural design to approve whether or not we can change the historical significance of that design. We have our fingers crossed that they'll say, raise the ceiling, make it flat, which would be a vast improvement to the room. But it is their say, and they could say, you know what? That's a unique architectural design of the time of when the building was designed. You may not change it. That delay, because we reached our 50th birthday during the bond process, will slow down our progress substantially. So while we can't predict what the outcome of their evaluations would be, we are writing our timelines in pencil.
Is that Suffolk County Department of Parks and Rec, or is that town?
New
New York State. Thank you. Okay, I'll keep my fingers crossed.
New York as well.
And the music room I see is hopefully going to be done next summer too. You know, there's.
Absolutely.
Sure.
That's why it made the list.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Sept, any of your resident have anything to say?
Seeing no more residents' remarks, I know Dr. Bosser wants to add a remark.
I do, and I apologize. In reviewing tonight's agenda and the materials that were provided for the board, I have to apologize for a scrivener's error that was included on the board goals. There is a line that is repeated within two goals, and that was merely an editorial error made by me personally. I understand the board has already adopted the goals due to the substantive nature of the content, which will not be changed. But I would like the board to authorize the district clerk to strike the line that was repeated before we publicize those goals.
Yes,
Agreed.
agree, and that was my comment.
I sensed it might be. Very good. Thank you, board.
Seeing no more business or resident remarks, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Mrs. Manolito, seconded by Mr. Lamena, all in favor, 4-0, thank you.